This is definitely a milestone moment, both for Rewind and Revive. And you know what? For myself, for first time listeners, or I guess everyone is a first time listener for this specific podcast, but for people that haven't heard me on a podcast before, welcome. I am so glad you decided to check this out and join me on this little journey through cinema. And for those of you who come from my previous podcast, McFly's Movie House, or those of you who have been reading the Rewind and Revive publication, I'm so thrilled you decided to take a stab at listening to me yap versus my writing this week. It's just so great to be back on the mic. And the reason why there was a bit of a delay getting this episode out is I had to learn all the back end stuff for the first time. So the editing, incorporating that relaxing little intro song, which, by the way, thank you to Andrea Bro for your patience. I know I was very nitpicky with this, but I love the result. I think it's so calm and just kind of the vibe that I want to bring to this show. So yeah, it was basically just learning some new skills, and sometimes that takes time. So I appreciate all of you bearing with me. As some of you know, I have a job in editorial outside of my publication in this podcast. So while I'll try to keep up with the once a week cadence as a whole for the publication and this, I just can't promise it all the time, at least not yet, but it's something that we're going to work towards. So hopefully someday soon. But for those of you who have no idea who I am, I'll keep this pretty brief. I don't want to take up too much of this pod time chatting about myself. You can find more information either on my website or the About Me page on Rewind and Revive. But I've been a freelance writer for 6 years. I'm also an editor now, albeit that job isn't in a film specific publication, but I still write when I can as a free agent, and now I have this Substack as well. So yeah, I just love movies. I've always loved movies. I've adored escaping into the world of cinema since I was a teenager, and I just got so absorbed in wanting to know and learn as much as possible about older cinema, world cinema, just so much of what we see today, the homages. I think it's important to keep those films alive and keep art alive as a whole. Keep talking about it, going to those retrospective screenings, expanding your horizons and learning constantly. I just think that that's very important in today's sea of, I'm not going to knock any specific movie or franchise or company or anything like that. That's not the point here. The point is to celebrate cinema. And that's going to be the plan for these podcast episodes when I don't feel like writing. I don't think I'm going to do too many solo episodes, although if any of you give me feedback that you do want more of these, by all means, I am all ears, but those will be shorter, around the half-hour mark. And that's the plan. By and large, otherwise though, episodes are probably going to be an hour long when there's somebody else. I'm going to have my friends come on, also fellow creatives, writers, podcasters, what have you. And we'll chat about the movies that mean a lot to us. And that could be, perhaps diving into a specific film. Perhaps we chat about a director's career as a whole. Perhaps we do back and forth roundups or put each other on films we think we should watch. That's an idea I'm really excited to explore further, by the way. But it's just going to be relaxed and fun and really whatever sort of flavor I feel like delivering on any particular week. I also plan on having some filmmakers on, other industry folk. Those will be more interview based, but who knows? Who knows what sort of adventures the Rewind and Revive podcast will take us on. But for today, I decided that this is kind of an introduction episode. Also, honestly, not gonna lie, I'm using this as a bit of a trial run for myself to see if I can get through the post and the editing. But if you're watching or listening to this now, it means that I clearly got it done. So tiny round of applause for that. Thank you. And I guess that now brings us to the topic of today's episode. And it's pretty loose. I was thinking about what I want this very first podcast episode to be, and I kept circling back to the title, Rewind and Revive. And so then it just hit me. The first episode should speak to that, essentially. Rewind and revive and chat about some films that I love that I think don't get talked about as often. So ultimately, I would love for you to walk away from this and check them out. So let's get started. This is so on brand for me, for those of you who know me, but I'm going to start us off with a light and breezy watch. It's from 1999. It's by Abbas Kiarostami. The Wind Will Carry Us. This is one of his most underseen features, I would say. One of. However, not for long, because it just got announced recently that the Criterion Collection is releasing it, and I am just so excited. I've been waiting for this release. I had a feeling that they were going to do it soon, and it's really hard for me to pick a favorite movie of his. I think it changes every month or so, but for a very long time, this was that film. It's just that perfect sort of cinematic hug if you're having a bad day. I promise you. And since this is the easiest way to go about describing the plot, let's do a cheeky little letterboxed synopsis read. So, quote, Reverend city engineer Bezid comes to a rural Kurdish village in Iran to keep vigil for a dying relative. In the meanwhile, the film follows his efforts to fit in with the local community and how he changes his own attitudes as a result. End quote. So, there we go. So that sounds pretty simple, but so many of his films are like that. They're deceptively simple. It's understated and peaceful, and that's literally why I turn to his films, and this one in particular, if I'm feeling down, because they just work. And his work sometimes is labeled as slow cinema, but I think that's too limiting, because what he's really doing is he's inviting you to see the world differently. So let me share a quote that Kiarostami gave in 1995 in Paris. It was a speech, and it truly just reflects his filmmaking approach, 100%. So, quote, It is a fact that films without a story are not very popular with audiences, yet a story also requires gaps, voids that are up to the audience to fill in. I believe in the type of cinema that gives greater possibilities and time to its audience, an unfinished cinema that attains completion through the creative spirit of the audience. End quote. And that just perfectly describes it to me. His films are ones that show compassion, they show human resilience, and that really comforts me if I'm not doing so hot. I always say this film makes a wonderful companion piece to his better known, perhaps best known in his filmography, Taste of Cherry. I actually said just that while guesting on an episode of the Substance podcast where we discussed Taste of Cherry, and I urge listeners to check this one out. The Wind Will Carry Us, I mean, preferably after Taste of Cherry, because they are somewhat similar, but Cherry is more somber and deals with heavier themes, while The Wind Will Carry Us is much more light. It's kind of like a cinematic palette cleanser, let's call it. And it's also more visually bright and colorful than many of his other films. It just kind of lulls you along as you watch our protagonist drive, as all the protagonists do in Kiarostami's movies. But it floats you along, and you see this idyllic landscape as characters just like wax poetic about the beauties of life. It's so soothing, and it just reminds you to stay present and notice the beauty around you, even the smallest details. Just open your eyes, basically. So yeah, The Wind Will Carry Us. Look out for that Criterion release. I will most certainly be buying it, and I hope that with the release, that means it'll get added to the channel, so many of you can watch it. So fingers crossed for that. But let's keep moving along, and let's keep moving along with this sort of floaty atmosphere. I love a good cinematic float. But for this one, this is an interesting pick. This is a movie I saw for the first time, honestly, not too long ago. I would say only a few months ago. Well, wait a minute. I think I can tell you on Letterboxd right now. Okay, yes, so I watched this January 23rd of this year, And the reason I'm saying why it was so recent is because rarely does this happen that I watch something for the first time and it just becomes my new obsession. But the movie in question is 1965's Love at Sea by Guy Gill. Man, do I ever love this film? The reason why I wanted to highlight it today is because, I kid you not, this is just so criminally underseen when it comes to the French New Wave discussion. It fits so perfectly within the movement, but it's just so underseen compared to the films of his contemporaries. And I really, really don't understand why. I'm honestly excited to learn a bit more about him. This was the first film of his that I watched. I plan on watching more. So yeah, I'm excited to share more. But yeah, Love at Sea. Let's go with a letterbox synopsis. Quote, during her holiday in Brest, a young Persian woman falls in love with a sailor, but autumn comes and the two lovers have to part. They write to each other. Will their love resist at a distance, each living his life, him in Brest with his friends, she in Paris who keeps waiting for him? An impossible love story and the cross-portrait of two cities, Paris and Brest, between the realism of the color images and the poetry infused by the sepia black and white images, lives the rhythm of the nostalgia of two lovers. End quote. So that's honestly pretty lengthy for a letterboxd review, but it's also pretty romantic. And I mean, I'm just kind of swooning reading that. But yeah, I love whoever wrote that. It's a pretty accurate description as long as it is. But yeah, there's so much to adore about this film, besides being this beautiful portrait of tender memories and nostalgia and young love. It's also a film that's an ode to cinema in itself, and it celebrates it. So there's a lot to unpack here. Impressively enough, and I find this so hard to believe, but this was Guy Gill's feature film debut, and it's so poetic and playful and melancholic. It's just this exploration of youth's fleeting nature and the fragility of memory, the passage of time. I thought that the interplay between the black and white and color film was especially striking, and that contrast feels very purposeful. Kind of like we're drifting between the past and the present and floating along dreams and memories, caught in this restless search for meaning throughout the daily discontent. And it's not just an aesthetic choice, it deepens the emotional terrain. And Gill weaves this interplay so delicately that dreams sometimes collide with reality. And maybe I'm being a bit too poetic here and a bit woo-woo, but I don't want to spoil what I mean by that by saying more. I want you to watch the movie. I also want to point out how much this film felt like an amalgamation of so many other filmmakers that I adore. And that's why I said it kind of feels like an ode to cinema as well. There was a lot that evoked Jacques Demy. You have those misconnections in port towns, the allure of the cabaret girls, little pockets of, I don't know, little pockets of feeling like his unofficial romance trilogy, Demy's. But then you also had the complaining, the indecisive men. And that felt like they strolled out of a Romer movie and into this one. I kid you not. And for those of you who have listened to me talk before, you know I love Eric Romer. So it makes sense that I would adore this too. But yeah, lots to love here. And for French New Wave lovers, you will adore all of the cameos. It gives me whiplash trying to keep up with them when I see them all on screen. And I can't remember all of them now. There are a lot, but I remember Alain Delon, definitely. And remember, this was made in 1965. So for those of you who remember what Alain Delon looked like in the 60s, hoo-wee, beautiful. There's also Jean-Pierre Léaud, who you may remember from The 400 Blows. Juliette Greco's in this too. I'm trying to think who else. It's not coming to me. It's probably going to come to me when I stop recording. But yeah, lots of cameos. There's a lot of talk about going to the cinema as well. It's just a delightful film. And yet, for all of those touch points or areas where you may feel like it's reminding you of the works of someone else, it still manages to have its own cinematic language, and one that I'm so excited to dive into further with Gill's work. And as I mentioned, this film, or have I mentioned it here? I don't think I mentioned it on this episode, but I've mentioned it in online reviews before. This film is really hard to find. And that really breaks my heart as well. I can't believe it's not on the Criterion channel. I watched it on the Internet Archive, I believe. I think you can find it on YouTube as well, but cannot recommend it enough. It's a 5 out of 5 for me. I adore this film. Please, please, please go watch it. Okay, next is a film with perhaps the longest title out of any of these films, and that's 1994's Portrait of a Young Girl at the End of the 60s in Brussels. This one is by Chantal Akerman, and it's an easy breezy watch, coming in at a mere 60 minutes, 66? I think it's 60. I watched it on YouTube, where it lives to this day, or it should be as of this recording. Albeit not in the greatest quality, I will say that much. It was a bit irksome, but can't find it anywhere else. I would love to see a restoration. But anyway, let's do the letterboxed synopsis, shall we? Quote, the main character, Michelle, spends the hour... Okay, so it is 60 minutes. The main character, Michelle, spends the hour discussing her views of life with some old and new friends and tries to understand her own feelings about her place in the world and her sexuality while a camera follows along at close range. So, yet again, we have a movie here that seems simple, but it's really not. And it manages to be somehow all at once delicate, devastating, full of life. It serves as both a coming of age and also a coming out movie too. And this aired on TV. It was a part of a segment, I believe. Actually, yes. I remember now. It was part of Art's 9-part series. And they had several different filmmakers release these episodes, or TV movies, let's call them. And the subject matter had to be adolescence. The other rule was they had to be autobiographical or semi-autobiographical. In Ackerman's case, this one was the latter, semi-autobiographical, with the lead, Michelle, serving as a stand-in for Ackerman. And yet there were some other qualifications that I'm not going to rattle off right now, but this was fantastic. I love this movie. It really was just a beautiful and thoughtful coming-of-age tale. And I really felt this one in my bones when you're young and dealing with loss and unrequited love, and how confusing and isolating that is, especially when you're young and you have that sort of pressure to conform. And with Michelle in particular, she's confident on the outside, and she's constantly talking, yet she's so buttoned up and doesn't express her true, genuine emotions. It just all really took me back to how exhausting it was being a teenage girl. And with going through Ackerman's filmography last year and this year, I'm just blown away at her sheer skill at portraying the mundane day-to-day aspects of life and the way she hooks you, while also allowing space for her characters to express themselves to us. It all makes for such a immersive experience. And of course, as I said, the film is set in the 60s, and by and large, it does a great job of transporting you back to the late 60s. It wears that sort of flair of the French New Wave on its sleeve, with the introspective and philosophical sort of, walk and talk between characters through a major city. But then there are moments where you get taken out of it. Like these very bold moments. Here's one, characters entering a record shop and you see rows of CDs, or the numerous instances where we see modern vehicles just drive past our protagonists. And initially, this really confused me, because I was wondering, why would Ackerman do this? This was later on in her career. She could easily cover it up, but she's choosing not to. Why is that? And the only solution I could come up with, and I would love to hear if some of you know more than I do, but I think it was maybe Ackerman commenting on the timelessness of the feelings that Michelle is experiencing. I don't know. You tell me. Oh, yes, and one final thing before we move on from this one. This probably has my favorite cinematic incorporation of Leonard Cohen's Suzanne. It comes at such a perfect moment of intimacy, and it was so gentle, and it really touched me, as did the final inclusion of James Brown's It's a Man's World. I won't explain why it was so impactful. Doing so would spoil the film, but yeah, just perfectly executed. Okay, 2 more to go. We are crushing this, gang. Thanks for sticking along. And the next pick is going to be a little bit more sultry, a little bit more sexy. And I'm talking about 1987's Rouge by Stanley Kwan. I actually have the physical copy right here for those of you who can see by or from the Criterion Collection. I believe this is still on their channel. I think. Don't quote me on that. But if it is, go watch it. Yeah, I love this film as well. I mean, I should stop saying that I love all of these films. I picked them for this episode. But I always refer to it as the precursor to the moody and romantic world of Wong Kar-wai, particularly in The Mood for Love. Let's give you a brief letterbox synopsis. Quote, amid the opulent tea houses of 1930s Hong Kong, a humble courtesan and the wayward scion of a wealthy family fall in love and embrace death by suicide pact. 50 years later, her ghost returns to find him, drawing a young contemporary couple into her quest to rekindle a passion that may be as illusory as time itself. End quote. That one kind of gives a little bit away, I'm not gonna lie, but it's on Letterboxd, and you know what? Now I can chat more about it without being so hush-hush, so there you go. Don't blame me. As I mentioned, this one's gonna be like crack for those of you who love In the Mood for Love and are yearning for that exquisite and decadent and achingly melancholic love story. This will do the trick. Plus, you have Anita Mui and Leslie Chung, who are both iconic. But much like a Wong Kar-wai film, why else this feels like an emotional precursor is in its themes. You have the longing, the memory, the doomed romance, that sort of thing, you know? And visually as well, it's a stunning film. The cinematographer here was Bill Wong, and he includes these gorgeous close-ups that are just drenched in emotion. And for those scenes in the past, he utilized a lot of mirrors and reflections. Actually, that's also similar to what Wong Kar-wai and Christopher Doyle did, or do, but did particularly in The Mood for Love, kind of emphasizing this idea of a forbidden love that we as viewers can only catch a glimpse of. Plus the color palette in those scenes from the 1930s, just mwah, love it so much. But instead of just speaking about the movies that would come after this, I should also highlight that Kwan is a massive fan of Ozu's filmography. He cited Tokyo Story as his favorite, but he said that Ozu's movies helped him grow up and cope with his father's death. And these characters, although based on familial themes, in Ozu's films I mean, these themes were universal to Kwan, and he found them enlightening. And you can tell he focused on that kind of compassionate authenticity in Rouge too. From the exchanges and conversations in the past to the ones in the future with some certain characters. Again, I don't want to spoil too much. Everything feels very real. It really gets you emotionally. It's a beautiful film. You should stream this. It's only 96 minutes long, or yeah, all of these have actually been really short. So yeah, I did a good job today. You could marathon watch all of these if you wanted to. But yeah, this one, like I said, should still be on the Criterion channel. Okay, so that brings us to the final film, and I feel like I'm kind of breaking the spell of dreamy watches. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing this to you, but you know what? Whatever. This next one, this is going to be a bit of a Orwellian hellscape, just a total curveball pick. But we can't be misty-eyed forever. It's sometimes we gotta chat about aliens and media manipulation and the hard-hitting stuff, you know? So for this final one, I decided to go with a dystopian sci-fi pick. Of course, it's from 1981, and it's Piotr Tzolkin's The War of the Worlds Next Century. This is actually a part of his Apocalypse tetralogy. It is the second one, I believe. They are not linked together besides the themes that they carry. You can grab the whole set over at Vinegar Syndrome. I have my eyeballs on it too. But I watch these or stream them on Mubi here in Canada. But that set, it is gorgeous, or at least the limited edition slipcover is. I actually don't know if that's still available. If not, I'm going to be heartbroken. I know you can get the regular one on Vinegar Syndrome, but For myself, I really want that one, so I might have to do a eBay hunt. But anyway, Letterboxd, let's give you a synopsis. Quote, Poland, Christmas time. A band of hyper-intelligent, bloodthirsty Martians take over the country and enlist television newscaster Iran Ideh as the voice of their propaganda machine. But when Iran dares to go off message, he makes an enemy even greater than the aliens, the state itself. End quote. It sounds pretty great, right? Next to another film in the set, which is Obi Oba, The End of Civilization, which I would say is even more bleak than this one. This one comes as my second favorite. The only reason why I didn't choose to chat about Obi Oba today is because I chatted about it in one of my later episodes of McFly's Movie House. I believe that was on post-apocalyptic movies, maybe, but I'm also kind of happy I went with this pick because the other one, as I said, is so bleak. It would have fit into this lineup even less than this one does. I didn't go in order with these, but what hooked me to it initially was reading that brief synopsis. I think it's actually different on Mubi. And I anticipated this really bizarre social satire. And while it certainly begins in that vein, we end up watching our lead go through just this brutality, the way he's coerced and heads into this darker territory. It was so bleak, which is funny because I said Obi Oba is even more bleak. But yeah, Sulkin had this remarkable way with world building. With this tetralogy in particular, I just loved seeing the set pieces, the grimy sort of atmosphere. And with War of the Worlds, this one is set at the close of 1999. And this rebellion that we watch unfold by our lead and the brutal consequences that he faces, much has been said about that being a critique of Sulkin's, of the Polish regime, as is the rest of the tetralogy. He tackles surveillance and loss of identity in Gollum. He discusses hope used as a tool of oppression in Obi Oba. You have the idea of a fake utopia in Gaga, Glory to the Heroes. But what War of the Worlds does is tackle media manipulation, as I mentioned. And you can really see Sulkin's frustrations with censorship and propaganda here. He actually told Film Comment decades later, quote, there's a line in the film that says that television has eaten our brains, end quote. And oof, does that not ring true today with social media and misinformation? And with War of the Worlds, we see these indestructible TV sets that are everywhere, and they just wield all of this power. Ooh, get goosebumps thinking about it. Like I said, the world building he does in his films is always so catching. I would say War of the Worlds is the most visually beautiful. I say that with air quotations. I know it's a weird thing to say given the content matter, but his use of neon lighting is so striking. Plus, there's one particular scene that always stands out to me. It's beautiful. It's in this bar, and it's immaculately lit, filled with the smoke here. And you see this bright red dress that pops against the dark surroundings. I really am a sucker for this specific type of sci-fi. Well, my friends, I think that's been around half an hour, maybe a bit less. Ooh. But as promised, that's kind of all I have for you today. I told you where you can find all of these films. I hope you enjoyed this little chat, our first chat together. How exciting. Many more to come. I'm still figuring out a proper schedule for this. Won't be once a week, I am sorry, but maybe once or twice a month instead of my usual writing and essays. So yeah, thanks for listening or watching wherever you are. If you want to keep up with me on a more casual day-to-day basis, you can find me at marta.mcfly on basically all socials. Letterboxd doesn't have that period, so just Marta McFly. And yeah, let me know if you've seen any of these films, if you love them, what you think, any feedback, and I will see you next time. Keep watching great cinema, and I will chat again with you soon. Mwah.